Welcome again. Thank you for tuning in to our weekly conversation with the founder and owner of LiquidHash, Nick Campisi. Thanks for tuning in with us, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me, Riley.
Cool. So it looks like we'll just jump right in. A lot is happening in the world of Bitcoin mining. Seems like every week it's just exponential growth in the world of new news. So my first question today for you is Bitcoin price has been slowly rising since July 19th. That looks like the bottom so far, right? That's after this dramatic fall. Does this really matter for Bitcoin mining, and how so?
Yeah, I mean, when the price goes up, we see a dollar term of of uh, of the amount in dollar terms, that we're making each day, which you must pay your power bill in dollar terms, so that spread gets wider. Now, what happens though is the dollar price goes up, and a machine that someone might have taken $25 a terahash for a few weeks ago when we were at 20,000, now they see 24,000, 23,000. They think it's gone up, and they may raise that machine to $30, $35 a terahash. So it does affect, the price does matter with us. But the interesting thing is that we're making Bitcoin. And so when you denominate your returns in Bitcoin, which we always try to do, we want everything to say, hey, is this worth it? Is it worth us putting in all this effort to go out and do it? Are we going to get more Bitcoin than if we just buy it? And so, the price does have an effect because it changes your returns when margins are thin. However, ultimately, if I had a fleet of miners and they're making a Bitcoin a day, then the next day until the difficulty adjusts, they're probably still going to make about a Bitcoin that day. And so whether the price goes up or goes down, they're still making one Bitcoin. And so, if you've got rents to pay and people to pay in fiat terms, then it certainly does matter.
Interesting. So going along with that, with the prices, many professionals are saying that we finally reached the peak of this inflation season. Kind of going along with the last question, how does inflation affect Bitcoin mining as well?
There's a lot of things here. It's that inflation has been cranking, and this is something that we saw, and in the long run, that's very good for Bitcoin. And to answer the question more specific, how is it affecting us in mining? If everything that we need to mine Bitcoin is getting affected by inflation. So if you're buying power from a grid and your fuel price is higher, in our case, we've had some force majeure incidents in the last year that we've had our prices go up. The parts we need, the infrastructure, everything, the building, the labor, almost anything that is touching this industry, is got some effect on shortages of material, which is then driving prices up because people can push up the price. So, where that goes, who knows? I do think that, you can't do some of the things that have been done in monetary policy without causing more inflation. Does the Fed step in and destroy demand enough to knock that down? We'll see. However, I go back to, when I look at everything in a Bitcoin term and, have a long-term time horizon, and it's really a good time to get into mining right now.
That's very interesting. So it sounds like it's following the natural flow of supply and demand. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's when those imbalances are off is when you need to be buying and selling, or holding.
Gotcha. Yeah, completely understand. So kind of a side fun note / question. El Salvador has officially adopted Bitcoin as a legal currency. It's very interesting. and their finance minister said it's actually gaining ground. Do you think other countries will do this same thing? And what are the benefits to actually declaring Bitcoin as a currency rather than a normal cryptocurrency?
Look, I love the El Salvador story. Yes, I think that there's going to be more countries and it's going to be bigger countries. It's political game theory, is all it is. Let's just look at what happened in China. China says no more Bitcoin mining. We're going to regulate this, and to the point of hey, you can't mine, and there's way more scrutiny on crypto in general. And look what happened. The entire network hash rate dropped when everyone left China and they migrated. So, if you stop using, or stop, if there was some law that came out that says, hey, no more mining Bitcoin in the United States, you would see a pretty big blow. Price would drop. Everyone would have to migrate. But there would be some other country that would say, you guys come over, because it's solving a lot of issues with building out grids. A friend of mine is actually down in El Salvador and looking at how to start really expanding the mining down there, because these are people that they're open arms. They want the extra business, the jobs that come in. And so it's, I think that most places like the US, I don't really see them doing some kind of thing like China. And then I see the smaller countries starting to really start, adopting it, because they can see that, hey, this is an advantage. And then, larger countries. I mean, look, adoption is growing. That's a fact. You can look at unique addresses. More people are starting to hold Bitcoin, and that's really what we need. You've got to get the adoption up to get the overall success of the project, because if we all just hoard it and don't do anything or never use it, then okay, is it, what's the value there? Ultimately it does, I do think that it is important for places to say, hey, this is currency and we're not going to tax small amounts. And and then now there's legislation now that's starting to say, hey, anything under $50 you're not going to have to report it like property. But I would love to see the day that everywhere it's viewed as currency and not property.
Yeah, so should the whole world be preparing for a day where it really is like that, where we use Bitcoin on a daily basis to buy pizza and gas up your car? Is that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, and let's be clear, when most people think Bitcoin, we're talking layer one Bitcoin, okay? 21 million coins will ever be made. They are, it takes a little while to transfer. But that is the secure layer. You have multiple, when you're running a blockchain, you have decentralization, you've got the security of it, and then you've got scalability. Pick two, because one is going to kind of always suffer in that. Is that if you try to do it fast, then are you going to still be able to have the security? If you don't do it decentralized, well, that's basically what we have now. And so then so it's less secure. So what I always look at is look at Lightning, look at Liquid, look at these layer 2, layer 3 solutions. That's where all your growth is really going to happen, on people using it. Like I go to Bitcoin conferences and events, and I travel around the world, and I always, if people ask what I do, and I start talking to them, and I see like someone at a restaurant or at a bar, and we're talking. What I love to do is I'll download a wallet on their phone, and I'll send them $20 in Bitcoin, or I'll send them their tip. I'll give them a bigger tip maybe, and I'll give it to them in Bitcoin on their phone. And you can do that within seconds, instantly. And I did it for someone the other day, and it was like instantaneous, and there was really no fee involved. with it, and you've got some bid and some ask, when you're buying through these networks, so they're making some money. But for me to send that value, there wasn't, Amex, Venmo, whoever in the middle scraping 3% off of it. And that's where I see, when people realize that we don't have to involve these banks and the traditional finance to transfer value, that's, when you're really not going to want to be short Bitcoin.
Gotcha. So it looks like Bitcoin it's rapidly growing. It's very valuable. And as it's grown really quickly, a lot of people are looking for green ways to start mining Bitcoin. Is this something that should happen? And is Bitcoin considered green already?
It's funny because I looked at like 2 pitch decks for Bitcoin mining related businesses, and one of them is heavily towards green, and one of them is taking an approach of it being ultimately good for the build out of renewables, but their approach is like, look, this is going to sort itself out naturally, and I kind of agree with that because here's the problem, is we got to define green, okay? Because look, just yesterday there was a methane emissions reduction program that was passed. Okay, this is a $1.5 billion in rewards for cutting methane emissions in the oil and gas industry. I mean, that's a $1.5 billion subsidy for methane gas Bitcoin miners, which then, when instead of releasing that methane into the air, you're putting it into a generator, with good emissions on it. So you're getting a little bit of carbon dioxide, but I mean it's 80 times less harmful than the other option. And so, that is the industry that I'm focusing on a lot. That, any way that can we take something that is truly waste energy and monetize it, because that's going to keep us operating at the lowest operational cost versus going out and let's say, we build a solar farm. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the solar farm is a bad idea, so to speak, because, it could be part of a renewable mix. But the problem is part of why it's working is because, we're basically exporting our, if you go look at what it takes to build battery storage and solar, it's not worth it. It's, your cost is a lot higher. The sun's only shining half the day. It just, the economics don't make sense on it. And then you look at an example of, how many hundreds, 500-600 gallons of diesel it takes to go mine that, then to ship it, and it doesn't last forever. So you really just export your carbon when you get in there versus going somewhere that says, hey, we have excess gas and we can't get this gas to market, and we could put this gas into a generator, we could power a Bitcoin mine. And so, I'm not supportive of, someone firing up an old coal plant and running it, but, there's guys that are even in the coal industry that are finding ways to, in a green way, clean up old coal waste and push it back into low cost power to power Bitcoin. And I go back into, I think there's a lot of different ways that we could build up our energy sovereignty, and it's there. I think the answer is it's a mix, but people that are vilifying nat gas, and we lean too much into nat gas, I don't think that they have a good handle on the fact that yes, you could have wind, yes, you can have solar, yes, you can have nuclear, you can have all these things, but it's not, with the exception of maybe nuclear, that's probably about the only one that I would be really willing to bet that that's the one that I'm going to hang my hat on because of its energy density. The rest of them are too intermittent, too unreliable to be 100%, to maintain on the grid. They could be part of the grid, but you can't, if the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, those two sources are not generating power. And the battery storage just isn't there yet.
Gotcha. So with that, what are the main energy sources that can produce enough energy, specifically excess energy, that are also reliable, that can power a Bitcoin mine?
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorites. There's anything. Okay, anything's going to generate power, but we need the reliability. So let's look at like a nuclear plant that's going to have a high base load. Okay, a good case with nuclear is okay. We're going to put the Bitcoin mine at the back of this plant, and then when the extra power is needed, then we'll curtail and we'll power down, and you guys can go ahead and operate. Now, this is what's happening in Texas. It's like one of the largest Bitcoin miners, Riot, in the Whinstone facility. One of the neat things is that when they got their contract, they are able to sell their power back at times of high demand. This is an unregulated or deregulated grid that allows them to say, hey, and we can make more money selling our power that we have contracted to buy for 10, 20 years, whatever their number is, and we can just turn around and sell it back. And that's what they do. And so it is really a good way. But, getting back, kind of on the source question, I mean, nuclear example, the hydro plants that are going to have excess water at certain times pushing through that can make more power than it's maybe needed. And any type of waste gas, or another one that is probably not talked about as much, that's really a wonderful way to generate power is through a lot of manufacturing processes, people manufacture power and then they might push it back into the grid at a wholesale rate. Why not mine Bitcoin with that? You can make quite a bit more off of your power than you would in a typical wholesale arrangement.
Yeah, that's incredibly interesting and efficient to add a Bitcoin mine to an energy source that produces excess energy. It kind of just makes sense, rather than wasting good energy, just shutting off the plant. Just fire up the Bitcoin mine and start harvesting some Bitcoin. Well, it looks like that's all the time for today. Thank you so much, Nick, for your time. For everyone listening, thank you. And if you have any questions, want to reach out to Nick, just go to www.liquidhash.com. That's liquiidhash.com. And we will see you next time. Thank you.